and say this is a public and recorded community meeting for Kubernetes, and today is February 4th. So for those of you who haven't taken a peek at the agenda yet, we have quite a few things on here. We have a demo from CoreOS, and I don't know if the CoreOS team is on here yet. If you are, can you guys pipe up?
Shaya is here.
Okay. Hi, Shaya.
Yeah, a couple of other of us are here as well.
Excellent.
Some of the Rocket devs over in Europe.
Oh, very cool. So we've got Shaya and I know Jonathan was joining. Do you guys want to identify yourselves or just count as some of the devs?
I'm Jonathan. This is Albin and Iago and Chris. We're sort of the core Rocket dev team in Berlin.
Awesome. So we will have the Rocket demo. We also have Ashwin from eBay who is joining us. Is he on the call or the video?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. So you're going to get to, or you get to tell us a little bit about what eBay is doing with OpenStack and Kubernetes and also the special interest group around OpenStack. So it's kind of two line items right now, but it's going to, I suspect, look a lot like one thing. I have an item that we need to chat about, which is the potential of a code of conduct through the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. Okay, somebody needs to go to mute. There we go. Thank you. I want to touch on the code of conduct and the potential for us participating in the Google Summer of Code. Those are things that get totally bumped to next week if we need to. We do have some of the testing infrastructure team from inside Google here, Jeff, Joe, and Eric, to talk about this. Sadly, they're not on cameras unless they also, we do have cameras over there. Awesome. Okay. And then, yes, see Jeff, Joe, and Eric. And then we can touch on the 1.2 release watch, just what's going on with that, where we stand with the next steps, and then move on. So let's go ahead and start with CoreOS, because I hear you guys might have an announcement this morning.
Yeah, we do. We're really excited to announce that as of about half an hour ago, we cut Rocket 1.0, which is a really important milestone for us. So this is, where we're considering like the on-disk format and the CLI stable, and we're really encouraging people to get out and try Rocket and run it in production. And we're going to provide compatibility going forward. And then, we've also been doing a lot of work on integration with Kubernetes, and Shaya is going to do a bit of a demo of where that's at. It's not quite at a finalized state yet, but now that we've sort of hit this big 1.0 milestone, that's something we're really going to be focused on over the next couple of months. So we should you'll probably see some press coming out soon, more details about everything in the release and what's in 1.0, and we'll also be happy to answer questions if anyone has any.
What's the status of the 1.0 launch relative to 1.2? Kubernetes 1.2 release timing seems a tiny bit awkward. What's the plan there?
In terms of what I'm making.
Sorry, one more time. I was just asking about the announcement with 1.2 almost done or getting close to done. What's the plan with regards to 1.2?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're not expecting that we're going to reach like what we're calling it sort of Rocket Netes as sort of the integration of the two projects. We're not expecting we'll reach like kind of a Rocket Netes 1.0 with the Kubernetes 1.2. Realistically, that's going to be in 1.3. There's still a few issues around getting the two integrated. Yeah, I'm sort of looking at them at kind of different release cadences. Does that make sense?
I'd say we were certainly really hoping to be able to run it with 1.2 particularly well. So I'd say it makes sense in terms of what you're trying to do. I'll certainly express a tiny bit of disappointment that that's the state. We don't want to wait to 1.3, really.
That's fair. All I can say is, hopefully, watch this space. We're really going to be now that 1.0 is out, this is going to be a real focus for us.
So game for the demo?
Yep, Shaya.
Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen.
You should just be, there we go.
Okay. So so this is a normal guest book application. Works like what people should normally be used to seeing. Down here, we have our masters and slate working. The difference is that, hold on. So this is running in GCE, and I'm going to, as opposed to a normal situation where you would see Docker containers, now everything is running in Rocket containers correctly. Pods get created, replication controllers build things, move things around. We have code to use the new features of a Rocket 1.0 that help us build the DNS correctly. It's not 100% stable yet. It's not 100% stable yet, so that's why I'm not marking it as for others to consume. We want to show that, and that it should be ready soon. If there's any other questions people want from me about this, I can talk about that too. Did that come through?
I think we missed the last sentence of what you were.
So I was saying if anyone wants questions about what we had to do for Rockinettes, I can talk about that too.
Yeah, it's sort of relevant to my earlier question. Can you just say a little bit about the Kubernetes? I mean, is this like trunk? Is this a tectonic? Is, you know, what?
So there's a lot in trunk, but there's a bunch that's still in sort of our personal, sort of public branches, but that has not been integrated into trunk yet. As we run into issues, we fix them and try to put everything we're doing is against trunk. To answer your question, we're just, some of it's not merged into trunk yet.
So the idea would be if we want to work with this between 1.2 and 1.3, it'll all be on trunk, or we would be able to do some work with it.
Yeah, once the merges are accepted, yes. Everything I am doing is off of like public GitHub repositories.
Yeah, all of our development for this is in the open. We also try to kind of sync up in the SIG node meeting every week or two about the latest status of it. And we have some documents tracking kind of the outstanding issues, which I'd be happy to share with you.
Great. I'm actually asking you guys leading questions. One of the folks on my team has been working with us quite a bit, and we're very excited about it. And I'm sort of asking questions that I think are maybe on other people's minds. Yeah, we're very excited about this. And then Michael Nelson, who's on my team, has been doing a lot of work with this and comes to the SIG node regularly as well. So good job, guys. This is exciting to see it progress.
Thanks.
Are there any features that aren't supported yet? Kubernetes features?
There are. We have, I can't recall exactly off the top of my head, but we have a sort of a document that's tracking the feature parity between the two implementations. And so once that's complete, that's when we're considering it, 1.0.
I can help answer this question. And remain most top issue with integration Racket with Kubernetes is the set weather and the DNS. And I think the DNS, the PI is merged. Should be merged today, or if it's not last night. And the set weather there have some remaining issue, and then most of the things we need to understand some like the master node issue and also the E2E failure test issue. That's all. But all the feature actually parity it is pretty much everything should be checked.
Okay, so exec and logs and reporting and all that stuff works.
So.
Yes, and the logging have some like the issue we need to figure out what's going on. That's kind of there's a test related to logging actually definitely fail. So that's why we try to, but shouldn't no different from the other format like trusted support this part.
Okay, great.
Cool. Well, thanks for showing us. Does anyone else have further questions? We can always do this. We can always revisit. That's another option. These guys are, there's Don Chen with the remaining issue. Thank you and congratulations, all of you, on the rocket launch. We're going to be seeing PR about it today, so it's fun to share that and share information about how it's integrated with Kubernetes or how we're working to integrate it. So something we as a community can do as well. All right, next thing on the agenda. Thank you guys from the CoreOS team. Next thing on the agenda is hearing about eBay and OpenStack on Kubernetes versus Kubernetes on OpenStack. If I remember correctly, you guys are at least looking at both at the moment, and one is one you are doing already. I'll just go ahead and hand this off and you can chat.
Yeah, so my name is Ashwin, and I'm leading the Cube effort here at eBay. Right now, we are actually running Kubernetes on top of OpenStack, and excuse me?
I'm going to mute you guys at CoreOS.
It's not working.
There we go. Thanks, Ashwin. Can you continue?
Yeah, so one of the things we want to try to manage with our Kubernetes cluster is the control plane which manages OpenStack itself. So, like I'm the part of the cloud engineering group, and so this particular problem is pretty hard because OpenStack has different versions, like which comes out quite frequently. And before we jump in and like solve all of eBay's problem using Kubernetes, we thought maybe one of the first thing which we want to address is solving our internal problem is to see if we can use Kube to solve OpenStack, the upgrades of the OpenStack, and all the necessary components. I'm not necessarily the part of the OpenStack group, but I think since we are pitching this container management solution using Kubernetes, there's a lot of interest in seeing how our existing problems can be solved using the same format which we are pitching to the rest of the organization. So and it's actually a chicken egg situation because right now Kubernetes is using OpenStack as a cloud provider internally to get the computes and the required resources, including load balancers and some basic networking and things like that. But if you have to manage those control plane components using Kubernetes, how effectively we can manage. So that is where there is two aspects of it. How do you manage Kubernetes on OpenStack, and on the other hand, how do you manage OpenStack using Kubernetes? So there is a project from OpenStack named Kolla, which actually deals with containerizing the entire control plane. They currently have a bunch of Docker images for each of those components, which makes up OpenStack, and they use Ansible to provision and orchestrate some of those deployment. And I think there is an existing project to do the entire thing on Mesos. And so naturally we were like looking at doing the same thing over Kubernetes. So on that side of the world, we have started this little POC at our end to see if we can run OpenStack Cola components using Kubernetes itself. So that is the discussion which we are having with the OpenStack community and for you folks from Randis and Red Hat and us. So you'll see more news coming out of from that front pretty soon. So now another aspect which is kind of related to that is like how we manage the Kubernetes control plane itself. So right now there are components. There are way many components which are outside of the kube. It's not well managed. For example, we are using Salt and the related orchestration which Kube has. But I think it is proving to be a challenge to keep it up with the scale we want to go, and reach. So we are actually trying to develop a solution which allows declarative management of the Kube clusters itself. So that is another angle we are looking at. So we had few meetings with Quintin and others to see if we can have something done generically in the community. But I think the option there was to try it out internally, like on using a third-party resource or our own private objects, and then circle back when there is some sort of tangible outcomes from that. So those are the two aspects we are working on from an update perspective. Yeah.
Does anyone have questions for Ashwin about what has been done or where they're headed? Or up next, we can talk about the SIG that is being formed around OpenStack as well. So we can hit that in a minute, because I know you all want to contribute to that group.
It's also a nice tee up for the SIG Ops, SIG Deploy, whichever we want to call it, because the SIG Kubernetes control plane is related to that topic too. So it's a twofer.
It is a twofer. All right, any other questions for Ashwin? Well, you can always have an opportunity to ask at the SIG Openstack group, or with the SIG Openstack group. That group is meeting on Tuesday afternoons every other week, and we just met this week, so it will be 2 weeks for the next one. You can join the Google group for Kubernetes SIG Openstack, and that will get you added to the invite if you have interest in either following the conversation or participating in the meeting.
I just want to give a shout out here. I went and reorganized the wiki page for the SIGs to try and create it a little bit more readable. So as you guys add SIGs, please fill in some of the blanks there. And, and as you get a Slack channel created, you have to actually invite the Slack archive bot there, and then it'll start archiving all your conversations. So that has to be done once.
Yep, it's a nice clean setup. And I also want to update your page a bit more, Joe. So there's work to be done.
Works in progress, yeah.
The whole thing, but thank you for the update that you did do. You took a Google Doc that I had created just to try and keep my own sanity and turned it into a useful wiki artifact, which of course we want to do more of, so thank you. All right, so next up, since I did my little plug for the SIG Openstack, are you game, Rob, to talk about what is currently being bounced between SIG Ops and SIG Deploy?
I'd be happy to. Shoot, boy. So I'm with Racken, and we're working on a couple of different, really one approach to standardize operations around Kubernetes ops. And I have a lot of experience from OpenStack. Y'all might know my OpenStack pedigree, where I was really involved in interoperability and ops and helping people. Thank you for taking notes for me. For ops, and so. I thought it was appropriate to try and build a SIG. Originally, I said SIG deployment for Kubernetes where we could talk about what deployments were, and I took that on for last week to talk about this week. So I put together a draft charter for that. And it's before I jump to the charter. How much time do you want me to spend, Sarah? Because I could just basically announce and then we'll have a meeting and talk about it.
I think that's probably fine. I'd love to get to the meat of the testing update as well, especially if you don't have a lot beyond the charter, which is please come comment on the charter.
So I'll spend less than 5 minutes then.
Okay, perfect.
On this. Right. So I put together a charter with the idea of looking backwards on some of the things that drove OpenStack into less operability and interoperability challenges. And so please look at the charter and look at it from the perspective of how do we want to start this conversation? It's really hard to go back and recharter things. The goal here is to really collect a group of people who want to operate Kubernetes in a scalable, secure, repeatable way, right? And what I've learned is it's really important to be able to give that group a voice so that you can go to one place and say, all right, let's poll the operators and see what they want to do. Let's build a reference architecture and collect those things. So the charter is about establishing that as a baseline. I don't want to spend a lot of time building a charter, but I think it's important to start that. And then pull in the things that we've been working on already. I know there were some people in Google who drafted a document about goals and objectives for what a deployment should be. We've certainly been doing some work and have opinions. There's SALT. There's at least 2 workable Ansible playbooks, and all that's great. That's how things get set up. To an extent, we need to agree on how we're going to do it and make it work. So that's what the charter is about. I haven't set a time yet for the deployment. To kick things off, I'd probably do it weekly. And then if we get some motion, then we'll slow things down if it's necessary. And my expectation is that we'd actually want to ultimately go into have face-to-face meetings or meetups or things like that. This would actually be a coordinating body for that type of information. It's a big charter.
And I will get you set up with a group and Slack channel and all of that, and I'll finish setting up the OpenStack Slack channel today. So that should get us started. And I think because naming is hard, do we want to call it SIG Ops or SIG Deploy? Because that will gate creating the groups. And deployment was confusing because SIG Config is handling a lot of the app deployment stuff.
Yeah, let's not call it SIG Deploy, please.
Okay, then how about we go with SIG Ops?
And if the focus is really about cluster, what we call lifecycle management, that's what we call we have a label for that. That's what we call things related to cluster turn up and turn down and maintenance, upgrades, and so on. So SIG cluster lifecycle or
maybe cluster ops, because that makes it clear that you're talking about operating the cluster, not the things inside the cluster.
Yeah, having the word cluster in there, I agree, is important.
I'm in favor of that.
All right.
It's actually, we usually talk about it like that internally. So.
Okay, I'm fine with cluster ops.
SIG Cluster Ops. Okay. More info as we get past that. The charter will probably take longer than that to decide.
Hoping to keep the charter discussion going, but dive into meat pretty quickly. So
right.
When we put together the SIG meetings, we will time box charter discussions with meat discussions. I've done way too much of this, and so we'll let the charter be a long roll. Please do not be afraid to join in if you have specific ops things. We're going to discuss those immediately. I don't want to do delays. We have enough ops discussions about cluster ops. I like cluster ops.
Cluster ops works.
It's going to end up being clops. Oh, dear.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Rob, and thank you for doing the note-taking this week again. So let's talk testing now, since you guys, I suspect, will be the meat of the discussion today. So maybe introductions first, and then you had some things, Eric, that you were going to hit on specifically, and then we can open up some questions.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's see. So, all right. So I guess I'm in the frame, and one of us is. Oh, great. Nope. Maybe. Okay. I think life sounds good now. And all right. So I'm Erick, and I am on the Kubernetes testing infrastructure team, and then this is
Jeff. I sort of moonlight on the Kubernetes testing infrastructure team. I mostly work on GKE.
Hello, I'm Joe. I'm on the test infrastructure team.
And yeah, so, if any of this sounds interesting, or if you want to help out some more on this, we have a SIG on Tuesday at 10:30, so please come to that. And, some of the feedback that we have gotten from those, I think there are a few things I want to share about that. One is talking about sort of making it easier to understand when I am, trying to commit a change into Kubernetes, like what is that workflow, like what needs to happen when, with testing, where's code reviews coming in. And so Jeff is working on a document to make that process easier to understand. I've also gotten some feedback that there's not a clear and consistent way to run tests without, hacking up a bunch of shell scripts to try and make it pretend like you are a Jenkins instance, and we want to make that a better process. And then, we've also been trying to spend a lot of effort in the past few weeks getting making it easier to merge consistently. We've had a lot of issues with, tests leaking. And so we are, the team in general is trying to reduce the flags, but then we are trying to work on things to make it easier to detect what is leaking and get into a better state about that, create the necessary infrastructure to make that happier. And let's see. So, do you want me to talk? Do you want to talk about the workflow diagram at all?
I can talk about that real briefly. So, if you've done any committing to Kubernetes or you made pull requests, you'll probably be. If it's the first time, you're probably going to get a little bit confused by all the bots spamming things on PR and what goes on here. How does it actually get from how do you actually get from the pull request to that being submitted? So let's see if I can screen share.
The green button at the bottom in the middle.
Does that work?
Yes.
Go. All right. So let's go look at right. So we actually had in the developer docs a while ago a document about PR requests and what that lifecycle looks like. That's been improved, or that is being improved somewhat, so that you can actually see like what goes on, like what the actual steps are and what the different robots are doing. It's mostly just a test cycle and some automated tests, and then the bot actually verifies that your tests are passing. I'm not going to go through this, but I will post the link to the. I'll just post a link to the PR since this isn't actually in. But this will be in, and so you can see, or you can actually go ahead and give me feedback on this too. What it looks like, what the steps are getting from a pull request to MergeBot actually submitting it from the submit queue. So couple things to think about, and Flaky Tests is an issue, so that's actually part of it as well.
Yeah, anybody have any questions on that picture so far, or you'll want to review it and offer feedback? Okay, that sounds like not a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I had a question about the flaky test.
Okay. And so let's see, can you let's see. So another interesting thing is we don't have anything to show for making it easier to run tests yet, but the basic principle is that we want there to be a consistent, clear way to run a single test, or run all of the tests in a job, or run the same job continuously, and to have that sort of be more like right now in our EDS scripts, etc. There's a bunch of tight couplings with Jenkins, and we sort of want to decouple that so that if you are not Jenkins, there's a clear way to specify, like, I just want to run all the tests of this suite and have that work well. And so we are working on figuring out what changes we need to make for that, and we'll post them to the testing SIG. So if you have thoughts or opinions, I know some people are sharing on SIG interesting little scripts that they've used to sort of put in all the necessary environment variables to pretend that you're Jenkins. Obviously, that is not necessarily the way to want to go. But yeah, so we would definitely appreciate any feedback there. The other thing that we're trying to spin.
Oh yeah, just really quick down. Like, the goal is to get to a point where you have one script or one command or something to run, and you just point it at an existing cluster, regardless of where your cluster is running, and then you can run whatever suite of tests you want, without a lot of other munching.
Again, trying to simplify it for people who don't have access to the Jenkins infrastructure, and B, are not necessarily inside right now, or inside the Google testing infrastructure specifically.
Now, another couple interesting things that we're working on is to try and add visibility to what tests are actually having problems or not. And so both these next two things are, where we're trying to figure out the best way to make them available to you guys as opposed to our personal boxes. So that is coming, but I sort of just want to show you some things that Joe has been working on. But yes, this sort of just, can you send it a suite, and then it looks at all the tests, and then it will show, what is running and what is not running, and you can toggle something that's failing all of the time, or just, isn't being run for various reasons, or is flaky. This sort of just gives a quick summary of what's going on. And so we would like this to be available to people so you can sort of see, like, if there is a test that's failing, is this, is it just me, or is this a persistent issue? And then the other thing that we are working on is
just a question on that last
we have a test. We're basically trying to get all of our test results and historical test results into a grid, so that, we can see if something is flaky, and have this, filter down to specific tests that I'm interested in. And essentially, each job is going to be a tab up on the top, and then the various results and their historical things will show up there. And I think examples is exciting something.
I'm trying to figure out, because we didn't hear Bob saying questions, so.
Oh, I think maybe let's see.
So.
It was just a question to kind of echo some of the questions on the group chat there. I'm assuming from looking at this URL that we can't get at this. If I don't work at Google, I can't see this, but you're saying the goal is to get this exposed? Is that right?
Yeah. So I just sort of want to show you what we are thinking about. This is not something that you can access right now, but that is a problem that we are working on and not intended.
There is a further extension of that, which is also trying to be able to see data and clusters into whatever this picture is,
right,
which would be phase 2 somewhere after phases 1 and 2 are defined and executed.
Right. Yeah. So sort of the 3 parts is 1, just getting a UI that I think is useful for people to consume. The second thing would be to make it so that you guys who are outside of Google can view all this data, which is obviously super important. And then another important thing is to make it so that anyone who is contributing meaningful test runs and has that data, that they can export that to us in a way. We're sort of going, we were working on, well, basically follow this, produce your test results in this format and put it into this location, and then we will have something that consumes it and puts it into the overall test grid.
Do you have a target for when you think you can get this broken free?
So we're working. So the test grid. So this one here I assume you can see the screen. The summary is probably just an HTML page. So that'll probably be order of days or weeks. And then this is sort of a more complicated app, and so there's another team inside of Google that's sort of working on this, and we use this for a lot of our internal projects. And so there's sort of a bunch of, it wasn't originally designed to be external, and so we are working with that team to try and figure out the most efficient way to sort of make it usable and not have a bunch of pointless links that assumptions about what we are using to track issues or how we store test data.
There's some decoupling that happens.
Right. Yeah. So I would say that is probably going to take a few months. Potentially it could be faster, but that's sort of the expectation I would have.
So this is the sort of thing that I would really love to see show up on the priority list for release 1.3 and actually be a blocker for release 1.3. So if stuff like this is not actually done, the release doesn't ship. So this is, I think, very typical of the kinds of things that need to be prioritized in terms of the overall project, and treated as blockers in that sense. So this is really great stuff. Glad to see it. I'm just trying to. I'll just offer my feedback that we really need to make this project priority. Great stuff.
So Bob, I got CC'd in on an email you were sharing earlier, which included a comment that said that not necessarily as many features, more about stability, more about usability, more about scalability. When you say stability, can you go further into that? Because that word specifically triggered a lot of conversations internally, because I read it as stability and accessibility of the project, not that 1.1 crashes when you try to do a thing.
Oh, this is such a long topic, and I think you were on the SIG Scale meeting this morning, and I mean most of the meeting was taken up by us discussing like what's a conformance test, how do we know whether the cluster is actually working, lots of stuff about lots of issues around like deploy flakes versus non-flakes, performance regressions, and there's an awful lot here. Rather than try to wing it here, I think I would like to try to create some kind of document which is like a point of view and try to get some feedback from some folks on this.
That works.
So, but I mean, I think getting this kind of exposure and better tooling around this kind of thing is going to do nothing but help going forward, which is why I'm really want to see this kind of tooling make it onto the like top 10 feature list for 1.3, or I mean, there's probably some other things as well. I think I have a kind of related question, and we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, but it's very hard to tell. I think it's kind of a known thing in the community that when Google puts the release tag on a release, that means, and they've deployed it into GKE, that there's belief that that's a much better quality bar. And I think there's also some mystery about additional testing and QA things that happens between the point where the open community testing kind of says, okay, and what Google does internally before that stuff is actually deployed. And
last time I asked about that, they had converged to a single set of tests, and we were going to move the released label when we actually cut a release, as opposed to waiting until that rolled into GKE, which was its original use case sometime many eons ago, last year.
I'm not trying to obsess over the when the label gets moved on conversation, which we've had in the past, but more like what gaps does Google see in terms of the if the community tests are done and you deploy straight to production, then that's a pretty good I'll say internal assessment as to the state of the community testing. If there is additional testing that goes on after that before deployment, then that's kind of a vote that the community tests are maybe not there yet. So I'm curious, what's the answer there?
We mean if your tests, so we are doing validate raw Kubernetes. I mean,
Can't hear, sorry.
Oh, Brandon, that's you. I didn't mute you. Typing madly. And he's also saying we're only testing the GKE infrastructure with any additional testing. So it's not that we are missing tests in Kubernetes. It's continuing to see how it fits in the GKE infrastructure.
Right, it's a specific implementation of Kubernetes in GKE that we're validating that it's working in the GKE environment. But the goal is that the Kubernetes tests that are in the open source, that are run as part of the open source Kubernetes validation, that they are complete and give everybody the confidence that the product is conformant and stable.
So that's the right goal. I'm asking, is that the actual reality at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that was Martin Ganholm.
Hello.
And just actually to speak to that a tiny bit more, we for GKE, we actually do use the same test suite and we use the same test results to validate releases. We just run that same suite on our own infrastructure, so.
Right. I think, again, we could go on quite some time here, and I know we have in the past. I think that certainly one of the issues around sort of testing and stability is that quality of the system is much better on GCE than it is on other platforms, and that's for obvious natural reasons. And when we start seeing non-GCE environments, it starts exposing timing issues, performance issues, other kinds of systemic things, which are considerably more troublesome. So in some ways, the multi-environment testing exposes issues which single platform testing does not. And so I think some federated testing thing may be a path there. I think you guys know that we spend a lot of our time on AWS, and I have know some other folks here in Seattle who do production deployments, and they were sending me PRs this week, showing me problems, Kubernetes problems deploying on AWS. So it may be that that's kind of a little bit of the disconnect between the email I was sending and I'll say the perspective of the Google team on stability. Certainly, I think in terms of performance regressions and performance issues, I think that the state is considerably more complex. But I don't know, perhaps I've said enough for today. Thanks for the opening though, Sarah.
Yeah, no problem. Brendan also dropped into the chat that if you guys want to do continuous EDE on AWS, we can set it up to block submit queue on those things. And apparently his mic's not working except when he's typing. Because I've muted you. Sorry, Brendan.
I thought I recognized his pattern of typing there.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else that you guys want to cover from the testing side, or any questions?
Yeah, definitely if there are, if anyone is running continuous testing or is interested in running continuous testing, and, wants to, definitely the ideal goal, right, would get to a state where, we are doing testing on a bunch of different platforms, and then we have a great way to collate all that data. So, I think it's more, we're certainly highly interested in getting to that point, and also, making it easy to understand what, if things are working on just my platform or everybody's platform, and not have a better way to consume that data than to be running around and reading a bunch of XML files. So yes, that's definitely a high priority for our team, is to make that a better experience, and then I can talk to the rest of the team about, maybe about making that feature a 1.3 blocker or something. But this is definitely, a high priority for me.
So one question I have is so when people find these issues on other platforms, if you're running on bare metal or AWS or wherever, I would assume that those get reported as issues in GitHub, and that you're asking for help from our team at Google, or sort of putting stuff out there so that we can help figure out and fix these bugs. We do want these things to be fixed. We just don't have the resources or the ability to find them all, right? Because we're not doing, big development on AWS, for example, ourselves. We do have tests that we run there, but we sort of can't find them all. But we're happy to help fix them.
Yeah, and I think the first step towards that is automated testing on these alternate platforms, not just GCE and GKE. And I think that we're probably not at the point where we can gate the submit queue on this. It's unclear to me actually what the stability of the AWS tests are, but there are multiple issues outstanding that talk about things not quite working appropriately. And I know that Justin Santa Barbara has been doing a lot of great work to try and get conformance testing sort of back to a good state on the AWS. But I think if we can at least see like publicly accessible historical results of the AWS conformance testing, and then start to see that flesh out for other providers as we go down the line, that'll really help people sort of sanity check, like, is this a known issue on my platform? Did I deploy my thing incorrectly? Or is this the software not working correctly?
Right. So I'm actually not seeing your name in this perspective. So who was that speaking?
Oh, sorry. This is Aaron Krukenberger from
Aaron.
I was part of the SIG testing group, so just thought I'd chime in.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Can I add something here? Here, this is Dawn from Google. And actually, the Node team, we try to add the Node level conform test. And so this is not covered like the AWS as the cloud provider or other cloud provider issue, but at least the cover Aaron earlier mentioned something like the different OS distro and the different kernel and Node configurations. So we also ask the Huawei folks and help to provide the container runtime level of the validation test. So all those kind of together will be as the package node conform test. So you could run eventually, this is a vision, but it's not completely done yet. Eventually you can run those node level conform tests to run against your node and figure out maybe it's your configuration issue or it like kernel configuration issue or other configuration issues. So hopefully we can get there eventually.
Yeah, let me pile on that for a moment, because this is a topic that's come up in K8scale a bunch of times, which is the ability to have a kind of cohesive state dump of the entire system, which includes as much as possible Kubernetes versions, Docker versions, a whole bunch of tunables, so that it's possible when you're making a test report to really provide a lot more consolidated information about what the cluster looks like where we were having these kinds of issues. And I think, we'll try to work on this as well, but I think this is another one of those things where contributing to quality and testing for the community is not just like going and writing test cases, it's helping out on some of these systemic things that will make, I'll say the total life cycle of test, have a problem, report, open a ticket, have great information in the ticket that helps everybody help with that problem is really part of the mission here.
So Bob, we got another missive from Brendan, who doesn't have a mic, saying that he is, that is one of the things he's working on right now, and you should be looking for something in the next couple of days.
Excellent.
So after you get that that piece of the work that he's been doing, you guys can refine it as needs. He'd like to float the phone home stuff. Okay.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
And collect stack traces. Okay, so since we are running rapidly out of time, Brendan, this might be a topic that we throw in for next week, if you're game. Sure, fantastic. All right, so let me summarize then, unless anybody has any more pressing questions for testing. Nope. Going once, going twice. Okay, cool. Then I'm just going to talk about the 1.2 release, and in the notes are the link to the label that is the 1.2 committed label, and that gives you the what we expect. Feature complete should be in the code slush starting Friday or possibly Monday. And there is still another tag that is things that might make 1.2. At this point, we're getting pretty close to the won't make 1.2 if it hasn't been committed in the sense of pull requests and such. But that is another list that you can take a peek at. So we're still targeting, last I heard, March 7th for a release date. Okay, one of us has to have speakers on. Did anybody?
Well, I'll tell you.
I'm not hearing anything. Is it just me?
Sorry, it's not just you, it's me.
All right. Sorry, you said a lot. I wish I had heard it.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really clear. 1.2, it's coming. There's a link to the label for 1.2 committed. There's a link to the label for 1.2 maybe. Code slush, code freeze, and feature complete looks like Friday or possibly Monday, at which point we continue to push on all of the testing things that we have been working on, plus go to the regular release testing efforts. Questions?
I asked on the emailing list whether the 1.2 milestone was the appropriate place to look, and somebody mentioned they were going to do a quick scrub of that. Has that been done?
That was Brian, and I believe I saw a note yesterday saying it had been, but Brian is muted.
Okay.
Okay, but I believe that that has been. It is going to continue to be cleaned up between here and tomorrow or Monday when we actually do freeze.
Makes sense. I was just looking for some place to just see the things start to burn down as we make progress on closing the issues out.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. There's still some candidates that will not, there's a list that might make 1.2. At this point, I'm thinking they aren't going to because they haven't been committed, there aren't pull requests, etc. So yes, those should all start burning down.
Okay.
All right, so we don't really have time for the code of conduct or Google Summer of Code. So I would ask anyone who has strong opinions about codes of conduct to contact me, and we will put this on the agenda potentially for next week. The Cloud Native Compute Foundation wants to establish a code of conduct. And since Kubernetes will become part of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation, I thought we should have a conversation about strong opinions before I proposed one to them because they've asked me to propose one. I will start with the one that Kubernetes already has and see what that looks like and if that's enough for us to just pitch it up to the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. So that's super straightforward. Then the Google Summer of Code, I'm going to punt that to next week. If we'd like to participate in it, we need to get mentors. So think about that over the next week. We need to have people commit to being mentors for our students. All right, any other questions in our last 4 minutes? Doesn't sound like it. Well then, have a great week. I will see you all online next week. I will post the video of this community meeting today, and then the notes will go up early next week on the Kubernetes blog. If you want to share the Kubernetes community chats video playlist with people, feel free. That's out there, it's public. It's not the most efficient way to consume these events other than participating, but it is certainly available if somebody wants to go figure out what we said during this chunk of conversation. All right, see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Thanks.
Bye.
Hello. Thanks, Sarah.